Welcome to episode 37 of the Fire Safety Matters podcast, where we bring you the latest news, views and opinion from across the UK's dedicated fire industry. My name's Brian Sims and I'm the editor of Fire Safety Matters magazine. We're delighted that this podcast is sponsored by the Fire Safety event, which runs at the NEC in Birmingham from the 30th of April until the 2nd of May 2024. Fire Safety Matters is once again serving as the lead media partner for the exhibition. To register for the show, visit www.firesafetyevent.com. As always, I'm joined on the Fire Safety Matters podcast by my colleague Mark Sennett, the CEO at Western Business Media and also the founder of Fire Safety Matters magazine. Morning, Mark. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, thanks, Brian. Obviously, we're on site here together at the NEC in Birmingham. Today is the opening day of the Fire Safety event, which we're the lead media partner from. It's a long way removed from when I launched this event, with only 3 months to run and 16 stands on it when I came in to do it. It looks fantastic. We were here for build day yesterday, and a lot of people expected here for what is the UK's biggest fire safety event now. So, you looking forward to the next few days?
I am indeed, Mark, and of course, concurrently, as always, we're working on the May print edition of the magazine, and we're covering fire safety in the retail, entertainment and leisure sector as one of the main feature sections, as well as passive fire protection. Hope to see the ASFP here this week, which we will do, and also competency, a major section on competency. And I noticed, obviously, Babe had a stand in the fire safety event this week as well. Of course, we're also doing a 20-page preview of the first of this year's 2 editions of Fire Safety Matters Live, which runs at the CBS Arena in Coventry, not far from here, on the 12th of June, ahead of the Fire and Security Matters Awards, of course.
Yeah, I mean, there is hardly any tickets left for the Fire and Security Matters Awards. There's 100 tickets left of the 750. I mean, he put tickets on sale 2 weeks ago. It has gone tremendously well. So if you want to go to the awards, you need to buy your tickets now. Just throw into a search engine Fire and Security Matters Awards, and up we will come. But as always, you don't have to wait for this podcast to get the latest news and prosecutions of products and services in the sector. You can go to our website, which is fsmatters.com. If you can't remember that, just throw into a search engine Fire Safety Matters, up we pop. And if you go to the website, you can sign up to get our newsletter weekly for free. You can sign up to get the magazine for free and look at all of the archived editions of the magazine online as well. You can also look at all of our upcoming webinars or watch our past webinars on demand on there, all completely for free. Failing that, as I said, you can get our weekly newsletter sent straight to your inbox, all the latest news and prosecutions in the sector. But also you can follow us on social media, X or LinkedIn. And please do give us feedback on this podcast using hashtag FSM podcast. But as always, we start with the news, and it's my turn to start the first news story. Today I drew the longest straw on this one, and this is a story Brian wrote to do with Grenfell Tower inquiry, and unfortunately the final report has been delayed, and there's been a little bit of a stink about how this was revealed as well. So the Grenfell Tower inquiry team has used its April newsletter to inform the sector and the public of its final report into the fire that occurred on the 14th of June 2017, and it's worth noting claimed 72 lives, will not be published ahead of the 7th anniversary of this tragedy. It's emerged that the process of notifying those people has become subject to quite a bit of criticism, Brian, that the fact they've used their newsletter to reveal this. The Grenfell Tower inquiry team has had to write to 250 individuals, a process that, they said, began significantly larger and more complex than they originally expected, they say. Although now reaching its final stages, this means that the team will not be in a position to publish the report before the 7th anniversary of the tragedy, which had been the plan. The Grenfell Tower inquiry team said, "We remain determined to publish the report as soon as possible, and the whole inquiry team is working as hard as it can to ensure that no time is lost. When we have a better understanding of how much longer Rule 13 process is likely to take, we shall write again, and if possible provide a date for publication. Draft chapters for the final report relating to the manufacturers of products and certification bodies are now complete." Well, before I bring you in on this, Brian, it just seems to be going on and on and on, and I can certainly understand the frustration from the families and all involved that this has taken 7 years. I mean, it hasn't taken 7 years from start to finish the report, but it's 7 years since the tragedy. And yeah, I mean, it just felt like they were hiding behind a newsletter is the theory behind why people are so upset on this. It feels like every time we talk about the Grenfell Tower tragedy, oh, well, they hope the report will be published soon, that they hope it will. Well, you know, we're still not there, Brian. We still don't know a date, and I can certainly understand the frustration for everyone. I think you've got some more you want to add.
I have, Mark. Following the conclusion of hearings for Phase 2, the Grenfell Tower Inquiry team is undertaking a sweep-up and publication process and will continue to publish documents on the inquiry website, as you mentioned. The last drop-in session for members of the public was held on the 25th of March, Mark. These sessions are an opportunity for members of the public to learn more about the public inquiry process itself and also to ask any questions that they may have for members of the Grenfell Tower Inquiry team. As of the end of March, the inquiry has disclosed 20,784 documents in Phase 1 and just shy of 300,000 documents in Phase 2, making a total of 320,442 to be precise. The total number of core participants in the public inquiry process is 638. So that's where the report's progress stands at the moment, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of ground they've had to cover, but as I said a minute ago, we all are very much looking forward to this report finally being published. Brian, what have you got as your lead news story today?
Yeah, my lead news story is for a company we've already mentioned, Mark. The Association for Specialist Fire Protection has just launched a new training recognition service designed to offer an independent third-party evaluation of training courses specific to passive fire protection. ASFP recognises and ensures that all recognised providers work to the highest standards in both training delivery and passive fire technical input, and also that recognised programmes provide current and up-to-date skills and knowledge by linking them to the industry-developed competence framework. The service allows the association to work with training providers of all kinds and review their internal processes and ways of working to identify a commitment to high-quality training and learning. This includes looking at how training is developed, delivered and maintained, how technical accuracy of content is ensured, and also how trainers are selected, developed and then managed. Once companies have demonstrated their approach to training quality and technical capability, their application is reviewed by an independent panel. All providers who meet the necessary quality benchmark gain recognition from the ASFP for training delivery in a particular subject area or areas, with ongoing oversight and quality monitoring very much part of the mix, Mark. They're then permitted to use the ASFP recognised provider logo. This is very important. That ensures high quality providers are easily recognisable and allows individuals, of course, to select the right training. Providers themselves may be dedicated training companies, those with significant internal provision for their staff, or manufacturers offering training or continuing professional development, or CPD, to clients or the public, whether chargeable or not. By virtue of only using training delivered by the ASFP or its recognised providers, learners can be confident they will receive high-quality input that's technically accurate, professionally presented, and both relevant and sufficient to demonstrate competence in passive fire protection, which is, of course, vital these days. All such training will be eligible to support registration on the ASFP's competence register. Having worked to develop this scheme over the last year, Mark, the ASFP is delighted to announce that Siderise Insulation has become the first company to be named as an ASFP recognised training provider. The business delivers, of course, training for designers, supervisors, installers and distributors, and covers important topics related to Siderise Insulation's own products, in addition to instruction on general passive fire protection specification, sales, installation and also distribution. What's your take on this one, Mark?
No, it's a really good move. ASFP have been growing so much and putting so much more investment into itself as an association and into its training. I mean, it's a really good thing, the training recognition service. There's plenty of people that can say they can offer training, but you want to make sure that you're only getting training from truly competent people to deliver it. So yeah, fully supportive of it. And as your article says on the website, there's a comment from ASFP Managing Director Mike Ward, who we know rather well. Mike told us that training is an important part of positively driving up standards in the passive fire protected sector and forms a key element of our broader competency pathway, which leads to the ASFP pass mark. We recognise that many third parties offer appropriate passive fire protection training, but as such, we've now developed a process of recognising those that meet our high quality and technical standards, incorporating their good work as evidence of competence. So yeah, Brian, it's a really good move, really positive, and it's great to see ASFP continue to grow and grow. So we've got a really busy podcast today, Brian. We've got plenty of guests, and why don't you share with our audience who's our first guest on this episode of the podcast?
Our first guest on episode 37 of the Fire Safety Matters podcast is Richard Hull, Professor of Chemistry and Fire Science in the School of Pharmacy and Biomedical Sciences at the University of Central Lancashire. Richard is a chemist who spends the majority of his time understanding the behaviour of unwanted fires, and particularly the effects of fire retardants and the toxicity of the smoke they generate. Recently, one of Richard's studies exposed potential inadequacies in the regulations focused on the fire safety of upholstered furniture. During our interview, Richard examines the main findings of these studies and also offers his considered views on the government's consultation around updating the Furniture and Furnishings Fire Safety Regulations 1988. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on the podcast, Richard. In your view, why does upholstered domestic furniture in particular pose a safety risk?
There was a report we were part of preparing on the fire risks of upholstered products for the Office for Product Safety and Standards, which had a statistical analysis of fire deaths, and it showed that although kitchen fires were much more prevalent, actually fires in living rooms and bedrooms were much more likely to be lethal. So more than half, I think, of the fire deaths in the UK occur in domestic situations, in bedrooms and living rooms. And I think upholstered furniture is going to be one of the main fuels in those places.
Now, you've recently published the results of detailed research that exposes potential inadequacies in the current regulations focused on furniture fire safety. Could you outline that research for us and also the key findings?
Yes, this links to the fact that the test criteria in the current regulations only relates to the ignitability and the flammability and not to the smoke toxicity. When you look at the cause of fire deaths, you find that most of those fire deaths resulting from inhalation of toxic gases, so carbon monoxide and hydrogen cyanide, rather than from the item igniting resulting in burns or structural collapse. So it's very important to realise that the smoke toxicity being the main cause of death is something that is affected by the flame retardants that are used. And if you use brominated flame retardants or bromine phosphorus flame retardants, which act in the gas phase, they freeze the flame in that midway position. So you get a lot more carbon monoxide and a lot more hydrogen cyanide. And what we showed was in the research that if you use different types of flame retardants, such as expandable graphite, which forms a swollen layer on the surface, and melamine in polyurethane foam, then you increase the amount of material that stays in the fuel rather than goes into the gas phase. And then you get the best of both worlds, where you've reduced the flammability and you've also reduced the smoke toxicity.
And flame retardants are, of course, as you mentioned, being added to upholstered furniture as part of the production process, Richard. Why are they necessary in your view? And is there an alternative that could be safer to implement?
I think we'd probably have to go back to history, 1970s, as the world changed from, if you like, horsehair-filled furniture to polyurethane foam-filled furniture, and it ignited much more quickly. There was more or less a trebling of fire deaths. That then people didn't realise that the upholstered furniture would burn so quickly. And certainly when I was young, you would see people sitting on a couch with an ashtray next to them smoking, and probably a newspaper and cushions and whatever on the couch too. So there was a sudden change in burning behaviour of furniture, and that brought in regulations that applied to the kind of furniture that was made in the 1970s and 1980s. Over Europe, you've had a progressive decrease in fire deaths in all of the countries, in Germany, in France, in New Zealand, in the UK, and that progressive decrease has actually been the same whether we've had in the UK, we've had our furniture flammability regulations. In France and Germany, they didn't have those furniture flammability regulations, but the fire deaths decreased at the same rate. So we're making progress, but I don't think it's anything to do with the furniture flammability regulations. Typically, you add flame retardants in order to use a cheaper material, which is in a high risk situation. So the flame retardant can help you get through a particular test where it would otherwise not be allowed.
And the government is currently examining feedback received from a consultation process focused on the potential for a new approach to regulating fire safety for domestic upholstered furniture. What amendments and improvements would you like to see made to the Furniture and Furnishings Fire Safety Regulations 1988?
I think if there was a mechanism within that process to look at the smoke toxicity as well as the flammability, then that would be the best of both worlds, and then you would actually be successful in reducing fire deaths. In the US, where they had a similar situation in around 2012 and they changed their furniture flammability regulations, this has encouraged the use of interliners which protect the foam from fire. So you have this protective layer between the outer covering fabric and the inner foam. And the foam is obviously the large bulk of maybe 10 or 20 kilograms of fuel that are present in most pieces of furniture. And the interliner is successful in protecting them. Now, the current proposals from the government are saying that we should be looking at a composite test. So we're looking at the whole item of furniture, not testing the fabrics and the fillings separately, which is entirely right, because a different fabric covering, for example, if you had leather on the sofa, then there is no chance of the fire breaking through to the polyurethane foam. But if you use an interliner, and research in the US has shown that if you use an interliner, you simultaneously reduce the flammability and the smoke toxicity, and therefore you can reduce the need to put chemical flame retardants into the furniture. Unfortunately, the current version before the consultation for the furniture flammability regulations was suggesting a separate test for foam, which doesn't have any logical place when you've decided that you should go for a composite test where the whole piece of furniture is being tested.
In the wake of your research and the findings of that process, Richard, what do you believe should be the next steps for both the regulators and also those businesses manufacturing domestic furniture?
The first point is that consumers need to be made aware of what they're buying, and the biocides regulations specify that you have to put the chemical name of the biocides present in a product that contains them, and the furniture flammability regulations have a proposal to put a label on which then tells consumers what flame retardants are present. And if we get a firm response from the government to say that we need clear labelling using chemical names, not, if you like, fire retardant product names, which are often green screen type of marketing names that don't tell you anything about the composition and the nature of the chemical, then people would be able to make a better decision when they purchase things. So labelling is the first thing. The second thing is to do this as soon as possible, because we've got a legacy of maybe 10, 20 years of furniture containing flame retardants that currently can't be dealt with. In the case of sofas and armchairs, they have to all go to incineration because they're likely to contain brominated flame retardants. In the case of mattresses, they go to landfill because they can't be recycled because of the presence of the flame retardants. So we've got a massive mountain of furniture which is accumulating because it can't be processed at end of life. So if it takes 2 years to implement these regulations, then that's going to be another 2 years that's going to add to those mountains.
Returning to the news now, and coordinated by disaster response and support specialist FireAid, the latest convoy of potentially life-saving fire and rescue service equipment is in transit to Ukraine to support Ukrainian firefighters as they continue to operate so bravely amid the ongoing conflict with Russia. In what's the largest convoy sent from the UK to date, Mark, no fewer than 33 fire and rescue service vehicles, 2 mechanics vehicles and an HGV carrying upwards of 2,800 pieces of vital equipment donated by UK fire and rescue services departed from Ashford Fire Station in Kent on the 23rd of April. Among the fire and rescue vehicles are 20 fire engines, 8 incident command units, 1 aerial ladder platform, and also 1 4x4 vehicle. The Home Office has been working in partnership with FireAid, the National Fire Chiefs Council's National Resilience, English and Welsh Fire and Rescue Services, and the Fire Industry Association, of course, in sponsoring and enabling the delivery of the equipment, which includes ladders, sets of breathing apparatus, boats, fire and water PPE, and safe working at height kit. This latest convoy is supported by 100 volunteers drawn from the Fire and Rescue Services and indeed FireAid. It adds the 89 surplus Fire and Rescue Service vehicles and more than 190,000 items of equipment sent to Ukraine via 6 previous road convoys and a rail shipment since the full-scale Ukraine-Russia war began back in 2022. The 15 fire and rescue services from England and Wales participating in the convoy are Bedfordshire, Cheshire, the Cleveland Fire Brigade, Hereford and Worcester, the London Fire Brigade, Merseyside, Mid and West Wales, Northumberland, South Wales, South Yorkshire, Staffordshire, Surrey, Tyne and Wear, and also the West Midlands Fire Service. Ukrainian fire and rescue services have been decimated by the impact of the war, Mark, while the demands placed upon them have skyrocketed as a result of the conflict. To date, in fact, 396 firehouses have been absolutely destroyed, with 92 more now in occupied territory. 1,676 fire vehicles have been wiped out, 91 firefighters have been killed, with a further 349 of them injured, while 5 are held in captivity. Meanwhile, the work of Ukrainian firefighters themselves has grown significantly, Mark, since the beginning of the conflict, with approximately 217,000 buildings destroyed or damaged, 18,270 structures eliminated by fire, and just shy of 5,000 individuals rescued. National Fire Chiefs Council Chair Mark Hardingham has explained, "We witnessed the sheer strength and resilience of Ukrainian firefighters since the day the war began. With the war continuing and the task before Ukraine's firefighters increasingly challenging, the UK and international firefighter community will continue to provide support however we can. The efforts expended to bring this equipment together and deliver it to where it's most needed demonstrate the very best traits of the UK's fire and rescue services," and of course they do, Mark. Chris Philp, the Minister for Crime, Policing and Fire, who attended the company's send-off event at Ashford's Fire Station, explained, "Putin's barbaric invasion has taken a huge toll on the brave people of Ukraine's fire and rescue services. They've seen their equipment and buildings destroyed. They've also witnessed many of their heroic colleagues lose their lives." Philp went on to state, "We're now in the 3rd year of what is a serious and senseless conflict. This latest donation of equipment shows that our determination to support the people of Ukraine remains as strong as ever. Every Western country must do everything it possibly can to help Ukraine defeat Russia's invasion. We absolutely cannot allow aggression to win." In conclusion, Philp observed, "I'm immensely proud of this contribution and want to extend my gratitude to colleagues within the UK's fire and rescue services and the industry at large who donated equipment and will ensure the convoy's safe passage." What do you have to add on this one, Mark?
I mean, Brian, there's some truly horrific statistics in there about fatalities to firefighters, the amount of buildings destroyed, the loss of appliances that are in there. I can't believe it's been going on for as long as it has been. But one thing that you see in tragedy, Brian, is people come together, and this is a fantastic initiative. FireAid. I mean, the amount of journeys they've done across there, and the amount, these are not cheap pieces of kit. Appliances are unbelievably expensive, but the generosity, not only donating that, but donating the time, is just wonderful to see. It's a fantastic effort, and everyone involved deserves a lot of credit, and we've covered it quite a bit because the FIA are involved heavily in it, and Ian Moore in his column in FSM has covered this at length too. I think the only thing I'd add from the story that you've got there is a comment from the FireAid chair, David O'Neill, MBE. He said, "I'm delighted that the UK's dedicated fire sector is once again joining forces in support of the brave firefighters in Ukraine. This is our 7th convoy of equipment since the full-scale war broke out. Tragically, we're seeing firefighters being targeted more and more. Just recently, 3 firefighters were killed during an airstrike, while an entire fire station and all of its equipment was destroyed." I think that kind of puts everything into perspective, Brian, if I'm honest. So, Brian, as I said, we've got a jam-packed episode on this podcast, and we've got 3 guests in total. Who's the second guest on this episode of the podcast?
Our second guest on this edition of the podcast is Martin Green, Commercial Training and Support Manager for Hochiki Europe here in the UK. Martin joined the business back in 2007 and has since held several sales-focused roles, among them Regional Sales Manager for the South West and System Sales Manager. His career in the fire sector began back in 1993 in the position of Commissioning Engineer for Haven Fire and Security Consultants, ahead of a move to Westbury-based Wheelers as Fire Division Manager. On this occasion, Martin turns his attentions towards the very popular subject of hybrid wireless technology. Welcome to the podcast, Martin. Can you explain the concept of hybrid wireless technology in the context of fire safety for us? And also, what makes it a major advancement and how does hybrid enhance the overall effectiveness of fire safety systems in your view?
Okay, hi Brian. To start with the first part of your question, the concept of hybrid wireless technology is it makes the system more flexible in quite a varied range of buildings. What I would always say is wherever you can run cables, run cables. There's no more reliable system than a wired system. But in some buildings, there are applications where you might not be able to run cables. So like sort of heritage buildings, it might be construction sites. There's a number of applications where you can't run cables in a building. It might just be a difficult cable run. Now that's where the hybrid, the wireless technology comes into its own. But what the hybrid part of that can offer you is you run your cables wherever you can run the cables, and then when you get to the part that you can't run the cables, you put a translator on the loop, on the wired part of the system, and all of the devices there are wireless from that point onwards. Now, the beauty of the hybrid part is that the panel doesn't know that the wireless devices are actually wireless. It actually sees the wireless devices as their wired equivalent. Now, for me, that's a significant enhancement because it means that the hybrid system is all one system, not two separate systems on the same fire alarm panel, if that makes sense.
And what challenges or issues does hybrid wireless technology address in comparison to traditional wired systems? And also, in what ways has its adoption impacted the resilience and reliability of fire safety infrastructure in various settings, Martin?
Okay, so some of the challenges, I mentioned heritage buildings just now. It may be a situation where the fire alarm panel is where the panel needs to be, and you can't run cables anywhere outside of that particular area. So in that case, you can put translators on the loop, and the loop might just run from the panel 2 meters to the translator, another 2 meters to, let's say, another translator, and then back to the panel. The rest of the devices will be wireless from that point onwards. So that means basically for installers, they have now got an option to install the wireless systems or deliver their fire alarm system in those heritage buildings. Just one example. Has it impacted the resilience? I would say not. My view would be that any fire alarm system, any wireless fire alarm system is as good as is as resilient as the survey that you had to carry out before you actually install the system.
How does hybrid wireless technology contribute towards the connectivity and communication between the different components of a fire safety system? Are there notable examples or case studies you can share with us about its implementation here in the UK?
Yes, absolutely. So the hybrid wireless technology, the connectivity between the two systems, between the two different components, if you like, is effectively on the fire alarm system. You have your wired loop, and then you have the translator, which is the hub of the wireless system, which then all of the wireless devices communicate to. What the translator does is it then emulates the signals and the type codes from the wireless devices to the type codes and the analog values and things like that the panel expects to see. The wireless device, let's say it's a smoke detector, will send a packet of data back to the translator. And that packet of data might not be what the panel expects to see, but the translator will emulate a packet of data for the panel that the panel would expect to see for the device in that condition. Okay, so it basically gives you seamless integration between the wired system and the wireless system. We actually installed a system in the Atlantic Hotel in Newquay about 2 years ago, and that has 200 wireless devices on a network of translators, but also we used expanders, and the expanders create a mesh network. That's what gives it its scalability as well, because the translator, you'll have a limit to the distance you can travel from a translator before you start to lose signal in the building. But then wherever you get to that point, you'd look at where you can put an expander, and that expander then extends the range of the signal. But the more expanders you put on the system, the more robust your mesh network becomes, and that basically gives the devices an always-on signal path, or back to the translator, should I say. So the communications obviously they are different for different parts of the system, but ultimately the comms to the panel are what the panel needs to see.
In terms of scalability and flexibility, Martin, how does hybrid wireless technology cater to the diverse needs of different environments, ranging from residential right through to large commercial spaces? With this technology, are there considerations for retrofits and upgrading existing systems?
Okay, so hybrid wireless technology, there are some quite diverse applications. Recycling plant, where the site op is a shipping container. Now, shipping containers, obviously this shipping container was an office, it was across a car park, and there was no way to get across the car park to put the devices into that shipping container. Once we'd done the survey, we identified the fact that we'd need an expander on the outside of the shipping container, and then that gave us very good signal inside, so we could then install the wireless devices inside the shipping container. But other applications, it might be a time limited project. So it might be that the end user, the client, needs a 100 device system installed in their building, and they've only got a week to do it. Things like that, you couldn't hope to install a wired system within a week, but with wireless technology, you can do it. It might be a difficult cable route, might be prohibitively expensive, but you can compensate for that with a wireless system. Residential buildings, we've done a lot of work with waking watch buildings in the last couple of years. And what we're doing there is where there's an issue with cladding in the building, we're putting systems in to make sure that the system performs when it needs to. But it also, because the waking watch is like a security service, and the cost of the wireless systems in these buildings is a fraction of what it costs to have the security in there, or the fire wardens in there 24 hours a day. That was quite a big thing for us, and we're delivering systems to serve that purpose. Also with existing systems, to add to existing systems, so it might be a care home builds a new wing, and that wing needs to be wireless for some reason. Again, a nice easy install, and it's still one system. You're not installing two separate systems.
Is hybrid wireless fire detection technology suitable for all types of building in your view? What advice would you give to someone considering using hybrid wireless tech in their building?
The first thing I'd say would be the system is only as reliable as the survey. Okay, the survey is most important. The survey has three functions, really. First of all, you need to do a channel scan. Our wireless product works on 6 channels, all within the 868 megahertz frequency. And what the channel scan does is make sure there's no interference on any of the channels that the system works on. If there's any interference on those channels, then that will create a problem for the system. The second part is making sure you get good signal between where you want to put your translator and the devices that you need to put, obviously, in situ. What we look for is a minimum of 25 decibels, ideally 30, but no less than 25. Okay, so where you go from the translator, you take your survey tool to the location of the device, and then you wait 2 refreshes before you then take the reading. Now, Echo, the hybrid wireless solution, works in a big sphere from the translator. So what you need to do is go to the floor above and go to the floor below, just to see how far away you can go from the translator to get your signal. When you get to the point where it gets to 25 decibels, then you need to start looking at where you put your expanders. Okay, and the more expanders you put on the system, the more you enhance the wireless mesh network, the self-configuring mesh network. Now, it's important that you get good signal between the translator and your first expander. Then when you come to build the system further, you might put another expander in. So you have to make sure you get good signal from the translator to the second expander, and from the first expander to the second expander, building your mesh network as well by doing as part of the survey. And that's as important, because a strong network, you're giving your devices an always on signal path back to the translator itself. Okay, but if your network's not strong, or you haven't got an alternative signal path, if anything happens with the first signal path, you lose all your devices. Okay, so really back to the original question, the survey is the most important part of the the system. That will determine whether the wireless solution is suitable in a particular environment. In terms of advice that I give to somebody considering using a hybrid wireless solution, always contact a competent installer, somebody who's trained with the use of wireless systems. Ask their advice. Go with their advice. What they will do for you is they will provide the survey for you. Once they've done the survey, that will then determine the suitability of the wireless solution. What I'd always say is wherever you can run cables, but there are plenty of applications where you can't run cables. Okay, so I'd always consider a hybrid solution, but always do the diligence to make sure that the wireless solution will function in that building and for that application.
So, returning to the news, Brian, and actually we've got a bit of news. There's a reason that Warren Spencer isn't on the podcast, because he's busy preparing for something I told you that we were about to reveal, and that is a special bumper 2-hour legal webinar that we are doing with Warren, and that takes place on the 10th of May 2024 from 10 a.m. till midday. That's Warren delivering it and me hosting it, and it's all about enforcement in specialised housing. So, this should be a really interesting session. So, fire safety and specialist housing and supported living in complex areas, especially in terms of your legal obligations, is what this will cover. And Warren has prosecuted more people than anybody under the FSO, and he will examine various scenarios involving specialised housing and supported living, outlining who may be responsible under the fire safety orders. This is a session not to be missed. Takes place on the 10th of May. If you go to our website, fsmatters.com, and click on the webinars tab, it's up there. If you can't find that, just go on our social media channels, LinkedIn, X. We're promoting it through there. At the same time, we are sending plenty of emails out to all of you to get you to sign up. So please do join us on the 10th of May, which is next week as we record this. But some good news coming out from us is just 10 days ago, we released the shortlist for the Fire and Security Matters Awards. We had a record amount of entries. I can't thank all of you enough that entered. It was just truly unbelievable. It was over 300 entries that were submitted, and it was a really hard job of the judges to cut that down to the shortlist that we got. I won't cover the security categories here because that's Brian's job in our sister podcast, the Security Matters podcast. And do please listen to that if that's relevant to you. You can get the Security Matters podcast on all podcast platforms. But there's just some fantastic entries. For Fire Safety Manufacturer of the Year, you've got Advanced, ACO, ARC Building Solutions, Bandweaver, CTEC, Eurotech, Fire and Acoustic Seals, Lunar Ignis, Kentech, and Thermocable. For Installation Company of the Year, Fire, you've got eFire, M&G Fire Protection, Miller Knight, Ogilvy Fire Protection, PB Services London Limited, Sharp Evil Technology, Ventro Group, Wentworth Security and Fire Protection Limited, Unigard Fire Protection Limited. We've got some fantastic people shortlisted for Fire Safety Manager of the Year, including people from East Midlands Airport and Mighty and Arcus and Atlas, BFW Imagine, Ventro, Canterbury Cathedral, Liverpool Women's NHS Foundation Trust, Southampton City Council, that's Neville Tomlin there, Ray Fire Services, Origin Housing, Securitas, and more. I mean, I'm not going to go through the entire shortlist of everything here, but you get a flavour of just how many people are here. The other categories are Fire Safety Team of the Year, Fire Safety Project of the Year, Fire Safety Innovation of the Year, Fire Safety Campaign of the Year, Fire Industry Woman of the Year, and then we've got ESG categories for people with turnover over and under 10 million that have been dedicated to ESG within their company, and of course Distributor of the Year as well. It is going to be a phenomenal day. We have got Fire Safety Matters live, as Brian mentioned earlier, in the daytime at the Coventry Building Site Arena on the 12th of June. That is completely free to attend, and you need to act fast because we've already had over 700 people register between that and IFSM and BAFE's conferences that are co-located with it. You just need to go to fsmlive.co.uk to register that. We've got an opening address from the Home Office, and so much more. Colin Todd is delivering a session in there as well. So much to enjoy. Free lunch, over 40 exhibitors, an entire day of CPD that you will get as well. Great networking opportunities. But then all attention turns to the evening for the FSM Awards, the Fire and Security Matters Awards, which are in the same venue, the Coventry Building Society Arena. Now, we only put tickets on sale 2 weeks ago, and we've barely got 100 left. So if you want to come for the biggest networking evening in the sector, and a great evening for celebrating excellence, and also plenty of fun there too. The event is hosted by well-known comedian Jason Manford, and we've got plenty of other things like magicians and dance floors and everything planned. So I would act now. If you're shortlisted, you really need to act now, because these tickets will be gone very, very quickly. Just go to firesecurityawards.com or throw into a search engine Fire and Security Matters Awards. I mean, I'm truly proud of these awards. They do what a magazine like FSM should do. They celebrate the really important role that you do in keeping people and property safe, and that deserves to be recognised. And thank you so much to all of you that entered. Huge congratulations to those of you that made the shortlist, and thank you to all of our sponsors who make it possible for us to deliver, because it's not cheap to put on a dinner for 750 people with entertainment, I can assure you, Brian, as you know very well. So is there anything you'd like to add to that, Brian?
Yes, referencing the FSM Live event, Mark, which of course I'm chairing during the day and very much looking forward to. This is our second one for this year. It's going to be obviously later in the year in October in Manchester. A headline sponsor, of course, for FSM Live this year, for which we're very grateful, is Apollo Fire Detectors. And I must mention, Mark, one of the presentations during the day is Vicky Wells from Apollo Fire Detectors. If you remember, Vicky delivered a webinar for us back in November on the subject of sustainability. And this will be pretty much a précis of that webinar in a live format. And of course, we've carried an article on this subject back in the March print edition, and that went down very well indeed with the readership. So do look out for that one. As you mentioned, of course, Colin Todd speaking, always a great draw, Colin, a great friend of ours. Of course, Ray Puttett, a great friend of yours and mine from many years back, is talking about complying with the latest changes to fire legislation. So a great session, that one. That starts at 11:20 in the morning. We've got Michael Croxford from Siderise as well, and Ross O'Loughlin from the Global HSE Group, of course, another one of our great supporters of the magazine. Andy Speak from ACO will be talking about enhancing fire safety and multi-sensor alarms in particular. So a great day ahead. So I do encourage people to register, come along for the day, see the exhibition, and hopefully enjoy the CPD accredited conference programme.
Absolutely, and just as importantly, by then everyone will know my mood for the rest of the year, because by the time this rolls around, we'll find out Oxford United got promoted in the playoffs, Brian, which, quite frankly, is
Yes.
right up there on my agenda at the moment, and has put me in a great mood as we've made it on the run into what is now going to be a busy few days for us at the fire safety event. One thing I love about coming to exhibitions like the fire safety event, and obviously this one is close to my heart, having launched it back in the day, and obviously now 19 Group own it and have done a brilliant job of growing it to what everyone wanted it to become. I love hearing from the listeners of the podcast, readers of the magazines. We've got a stand, Fire Safety Matters, in the fire safety event. We've got multiple stands, Brian. We've got one for Security Matters and PSI, Pressure Security Installer, and Benchmark Magazine over in security. We've got a Health and Safety Matters stand as well, and a Health and Safety event. So do come and talk to Brian and I and Leanne. That is the team on Fire Safety Matters. Do come and talk to us, because we're always keen to get your feedback on what you think of the magazine, the podcast, everything that we do, the conference. If you'd like to work with us, then absolutely, Leanne and I would love to have a chat with you about how you can reach our audience. But as you as our listening audience now, we're really grateful for the time you dedicate to this podcast, but we do love hearing from you and your feedback and what you think about it. So, if you see us in the aisles, or you see us in the theatres that we've helped put on, or you see us on the stand, come and chat to us, because we always want to make things better. We strive to make these podcasts and the magazine better. That's what we want to do. So do come and chat to us. And that's one of the things I do love about these events, Brian. I know you're going to be busy for the next few days, aren't you?
Very busy. I've got wall-to-wall meetings for the first 2 days, Mark. And of course, we've got evening events as well, either with clients or ourselves, of course. And Thursday, a few meetings. It's normally the mop-up day, I guess, at exhibitions, the Thursday. Many people are quite tired by that point, but we do like to try and get meetings in at least until about 2 o'clock. So, yeah, very much looking forward to it as always.
Well, Brian, we're going to close out this episode of the podcast, as promised, with a third guest. So who have you got for us?
Our final guest on episode 37 is Paul Tilbury, Divisional Manager for Fire Systems at distributor Dynamic CCTV, which now lists Apollo Fire Detectors, CTEC and also Nitan among those companies with whom it collaborates. A graduate in the subject of risk and security management from the University of Leicester and also a fellow of the Institute of Sales Professionals, Paul worked at Norfas, Chubb Fire and Security and Norbane before joining the ranks at Dynamic CCTV in 2016. His current role began in May last year. During our interview, Paul examines why Dynamic CCTV chose to move into the fire domain and outlines some of the services currently being offered by the business. Thanks very much for joining us, Paul. First of all, can you tell us all about Dynamic CCTV as a business? Where's the company based? How long has it been in operation? What's the core remit? And also, who's in the customer base?
Thanks, Brian, for having me on the call. To give you an introduction to Dynamic CCTV, so the business was established in 1994, based in Middlesbrough. That's where our HQ and main distribution centre is, offering next day delivery throughout the UK. We had a change of owner in 2022 and have seen a huge amount of updating and expansion investment across the business. We've now got additional locations in Darlington, Doncaster and London, as well as sub-distribution network covering the whole UK. We will also soon be opening what we believe is to be the largest customer experience centre of any UK distributor based out of our HQ in Middlesbrough. We currently employ circa 70 people, lots of different nationalities, but all with a heavy technical bias. And our remit is to provide the best products from stock, off the shelf, at a great price, award-winning tech support, back up to the trade, systems integrators and installers.
What's your role in the company and also what does it involve on a daily basis?
Okay, I've got nearly 40 years experience in the fire and security industry, and yes, I'm starting to show my age. My role here at Dynamic, originally, I headed up the external security sales team, but over the past year, I've transitioned to head up the new fire division. So within the fire division, what I do sort of on a daily basis is I set the strategy for our fire division, including liaison with manufacturers, product selection, pricing, internal training. I also support the existing teams, and also I liaise with customers on a daily basis.
What would you say is your greatest achievement to date during the time you spent with the business, Paul?
Well, that's really an easy one for me. And thanks for asking it, Brian, because it's one of my proudest moments with the company. For me, being part of an exceptional team that helped to grow the CCTV side of the business from 15 million to near 50 million over a 5-year period.
And why was the decision taken to venture into fire product distribution?
Again, I think it's a sort of a natural progression from being a security distributor. The pieces of the jigsaw were all there, and all we had to do was put things in their rightful place, as well as onboarding the right manufacturers.
What key brands and products do you distribute at the moment, Paul?
Well, the key brands that we have on board at the moment, off the shelf, Advanced with their fire panels, Apollo with the detection side, CTEC, we have their panels and detectors, Fike, we have their kit, Morley, Nitan, Yuasa, Powersonic with the battery side of things, Hayden with the power supplies, Ventcroft for our cable, Penton and Toa with our speaker offerings for the fire industry, and that's just to name a few.
And does the business frontline support all of the products that it sells?
Yes, we offer what we know is award-winning frontline tech support on all of our brands. All of our staff are technically trained on new products as we onboard them. Did I mention that we've won the PSI Technical Support Award for the past 2 years?
You didn't.
Well, we have.
What other services do you offer for today's practicing fire system installers?
Okay, as part of our service, we're not just box shifters. To help installers, we can assist with site surveys, system designs. We've had probably 10 of our staff fire call trained. We can do drawings, we can do design certificates, training and best practice advice, all within the guidelines of BS 5839. And for those installers that are doing a dual role, installing fire and security, we can offer all of those services again and products to suit.
And finally, Paul, what would you say to those companies who've not used Dynamic CCTV as yet, but might be thinking about doing so?
What would I say? Don't accept anything less than a top level service. And I'm talking from system design through supply, through support.
brings us to the end of episode 37 of the Fire Safety Matters podcast. Many thanks indeed to our special guest on this edition, namely Professor Richard Hull from the University of Central Lancashire, Martin Green from Hochiki, and also Paul Tilbury of Dynamic CCTV. You can read more on the issues raised in this edition of the podcast and others by visiting the Fire Safety Matters website. The web address you need to access is www.fsmatters.com. We do hope you've enjoyed the content delivered in the podcast and found it informative. Please do contact us if there are any particular themes or issues you would like us to explore on upcoming editions. You can do so on X, formerly Twitter of course, by using the hashtag FSMPodcast. On that note, do make sure you follow us on X at FSMatters_MAG and also access our LinkedIn page at Fire Safety Matters magazine and website. Please do like and share the content of our regular podcasts and spread the word among your industry colleagues. You can listen to the Fire Safety Matters podcast for free on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube or Podbean. All you need to do is enter the term Fire Safety Matters into your chosen platform search box. We'll see you next time.